The Vanishing Hour. In the quiet town of Blackwood, life was simple, predictable, and uneventful. But beneath its peaceful surface lurked a mystery that no one dared to discuss openly. Every night at exactly 2:13 a.m., an hour vanished. Clocks stopped, sounds disappeared, and memories of that time dissolved as if they never existed. The townsfolk called it the Vanishing Hour. For years, the rule was simple. Be asleep before 2:13 a.m., lock your doors, and never stay awake. Those who ignored the rule disappeared. The only trace they left behind was a single inexplicable object, a burnt matchstick, a torn playing card, a shoe. Daniel, a lifelong insomniac, scoffed at the town's superstition. He was an outsider, someone who had moved to Blackwood for its affordability, not its lore. To him, the stories were nonsense, tales to keep people living in fear of nothing. One cold January night, curiosity got the better of him. Determined to prove the vanishing hour was a myth, Daniel decided to stay awake. He brewed a pot of strong coffee, pulled on a sweater, and sat in his living room, his eyes fixed on the clock on the wall. The seconds ticked by steadily, but as the clock struck 2:13 a.m., everything stopped. The faint hum of his heater, the ticking of his watch, even the distant rustling of trees outside, all fell silent. The world felt frozen, like it was holding its breath. Daniel stood up, his heart pounding in the unnatural stillness. He glanced at his watch, but the hands had stopped moving. He muttered to himself that it was just a coincidence, a power outage perhaps. But then he noticed something outside the window. The street, once dimly lit by flickering streetlights, was now bathed in an eerie grayish light. Nothing moved, no cars, no animals, not even the wind. And in the middle of the empty street stood a figure. It was tall, shrouded in shadows, and utterly still. Daniel squinted, trying to make out its features, but there were none. It was a black void in the shape of a person. Then it moved, not by walking, but by somehow sliding closer, almost imperceptibly. Daniel's throat tightened. He stepped back, away from the window. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, but something was wrong. His face began to twist and distort. His eyes hollowed out. His mouth stretched into a soundless scream. He blinked, and suddenly, he wasn't in his living room anymore. He stood in a vast black expanse. There was no floor, no ceiling, no horizon, just emptiness. Yet he wasn't alone. Surrounding him were people, dozens of them frozen in place. Their eyes were wide with terror, their mouths open in silent screams. He recognized them. The baker, the school teacher, the boy who used to ride his bike past his house. They were the ones who had disappeared, taken during the vanishing hour. A voice whispered in his ear, low and chilling, "You shouldn't have stayed awake." The darkness swallowed him, and then he was back in his living room. The clock ticked again, showing 3:13 a.m. The hour had passed. Everything seemed normal until he looked at the window. His reflection was gone. The next morning, no one saw Daniel. His house was empty, his belongings untouched. The only trace of him was a single burnt matchstick lying on his coffee table. The townsfolk continued their lives as they always did, avoiding the streets at night and locking their doors before 2:13 a.m. They never spoke of Daniel, just as they never spoke of anyone who vanished during the hour. And so, the vanishing hour remained a mystery. But everyone in Blackwood knew one thing. It was always watching, waiting, and choosing its next victim.